Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our Native Girls Talk, our second series. We're doing emotional self tonight. We have two really great presenters that are here with us tonight. And just to give you a little bit of background, like I did before, to tell about how Native Girls Rock got started. It started with some work several years back with the amazing Miss Kim Pevia, where we were doing talking circles and girls and women's empowerment. And out of that, trying to think of a name of what we wanted to call the work that we were doing, we came out with Native Girls Rock. And A Time to Heal, this whole series was born about 2 years ago when I lost my son, Alex. And just after that happened, I kept saying, I was praying about, when can I heal from this? When is that going to happen? And then the Creator just sort of dropped in my spirit these talks. And so over a 2-year span, we had thinking and praying about it. And then the time became right. And we were able to put some amazing women together. And tonight we have with us the amazing Miss Charlie Lowry. She is Lumbee and Tuscarora. She's a musician, cultural worker. She's an advocate for women. She does some great work in our counties. And we also have back with us, you guys saw Alicia on the mental self part that we did. Miss Alicia Freeman, she is a licensed clinical mental health counselor. She is Waccamaw Siouan. She also owns Ascend Counseling PLLC, and she's a psychotherapist at UNC Chapel Hill, mental health awareness coordinator. So right now I'm going to ask these ladies to give you a little bit more information about who they are. Charlie?
Well, good evening to everyone that's tuning in our virtual space. It's a very different time that we're living in which we have access to platforms like this. And I found it interesting as a musician. And that's what I am, a singer-songwriter from Pembroke. I live in the Union Chapel community here in my homeland. It's my family's land, has been in our family for generations. And this is my base. I've lived in Chapel Hill, graduated from UNC Chapel Hill, moved home after graduation, and then a couple of years later moved back to Chapel Hill. And then my mother got sick around 2016, and I ended up moving back home. And I found that just being here as a musician, Robeson County's it's a great location. It's a great location. I can get anywhere I need to. I travel and perform throughout the Carolinas, up and down the East Coast. Sometimes I'll go on the West Coast and perform, and I've been overseas, but this is what I've been doing professionally since 2008, and I love it. I'm very passionate about it, passionate about using my music and original songs to share messages about the different plights in our communities, in our tribal communities, positive and negative, just to share our experience as Indigenous people in modern society, and trying to increase our visibility as well on a national and global scale.
Charlie, we're so excited that you are with us tonight. Alicia, you want to tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, I'm so glad that Charlie is here too. She inspires me so much. Getting emotional.
No, you're gonna have me crying, and it's okay. It's okay.
It's all right. It's emotional. It's emotional self, right? So it's okay.
Yeah.
So I already expected it because it's the emotional self, but the representation definitely matters, and the healing is so present through her art, and I appreciate it. But yeah, I am located in Durham. And so, of course, I miss my people and out here walking in two worlds. So any time I can, find folks. I actually had lunch with someone today who's Lumbee at Carolina, because, you need those connections, and it's just so important. But I am working at UNC Chapel Hill. I went to East Carolina University for undergrad and grad school. So very familiar with Greenville, and grew up, of course, in the Buckhead community, Waccamaw Siouan, but there's nothing like, our homeland, and just being able to be yourself. You don't have to explain why you have this accent that you can't hear, but everybody else seems to make comments about. And folks just know, they know what you mean, they know where you come from, and they know who you are, and you can feel grounded in that. So, yeah, that's a little bit more about me.
Hi. Thank you so much. And we're so excited to have both of you here with us tonight. And from our last live that we did, we got so much positive feedback that we know that this work that we're doing, that you guys have partnered with us on, is so important. And just the fact that we can come on and have a conversation, start talking about our mental health and our emotional health and our emotional self, I think is really important. It's really needed nowadays. We face so much between COVID and just life in general. We've all experienced grief in some form or another. And I think that this is the moment in time. This is that a time that is appointed for us to be able to, bring these conversations to the table and open up the door for our people to be able to say, hey, it's okay. We don't have to put these things, how we feel emotionally and mentally, we don't have to sweep that under the rug. And some of the things that we talked about in our last session was that, our people tend to talk about if you have diabetes or if you have high blood pressure and all of that, folks will say, hey, I got high blood pressure and I'm taking this medicine, whatever. But then when it comes to our mental health and our emotional health, that we tend to kind of, push that under the rug a little bit, because it's one of those things that we don't talk about as much. So in your experience, you guys, either of you can answer this or both, what is your experience in looking at our community and our culture, how we tend to analyze or navigate through the emotional parts of how we're feeling?
Well, right, I have a whirlwind of thoughts right off. As Native people, I think a lot of times we have to work 2 or 3 times as hard to excel in society, whether that's networking, we network harder, just grinding. And I think that comes from some of our ancestors and the lessons that they've instilled in us, because they lived in an even tougher time, tougher times than we have. And so I feel like we've been conditioned to put our nose to the grindstone, put our heads down, and just focus on the task at hand, regardless of how much weight it puts on us or how much we're expected to carry, and not acknowledge that, just continue with one foot in front of the other. And I feel like sometimes it's okay that we need to step back and analyze where we're at and put self-care as a priority. There was something else. I feel like I need a notepad. That's what I feel like. Take some notes so that I can hit on those points. But Alicia, if you got something to say, I'm going to think of what I had in mind.
Okay. All right. Jump back in when you're ready. But the one thing that came to mind, just in terms of my professional work and some work with Carolina Indian Circle, is I did a workshop on microaggressions. And what we really talked about was, we started with trying to identify some of these emotions that come up for us, because I just remember growing up, and I feel like, the only emotions that were acceptable was anger, and so sometimes I'm sad and it presents as mad, or I'm frustrated and the only emotion that I'm displaying is anger or happiness or contentness. And And there's just such a range. And so what I use, a tool that I use is like this feelings wheel. And there's just so many emotions and they manifest in different ways in our body. And so sometimes when folks tell me, okay, I'm feeling sad, and I say, well, how do you know when you're feeling sad? How does that show up for you? Like maybe I cry, maybe I feel heavy, maybe I notice my shoulders are more down than a regular day. But we also feel nervous and we feel, anxious, and how does that show up for us? And so I think it's really important for us to understand like the broad spectrum of emotions, and that it's okay to feel other things besides just happy and mad. And I've also been told that mad or angry is a secondary emotion. Like a lot of times that's not the emotion. The primary emotion is something else, and that's how we're displaying it out in the world. So just really trying to get to the root of what is that core emotion, and then you can identify those needs that are going unmet. And then we get to what Charlie's talking about self-care, because if you can start with identifying that emotion and then move into what need is, going unmet that's producing this unpleasant emotion, then I can move into that place of self-care. And, maybe it's not an activity, maybe it's more radical self-care, and I need to set a boundary, like a healthy boundary. That's a form of self-care. And so just trying to educate on those types of things and what that looks like for us, which is different for everybody, but definitely different in our culture.
So as Charlie was saying, I'm sorry, Charlie, as you were saying before, and I just recently just had this conversation today with someone that as Native people, especially Native women, that whenever we're coming into a profession or we are in an arena with others, I think we do feel like that we have to perform better. We have to really show that we know what we're doing and that we're professional and all of these things. And I said just today, I said, we want, I think that's twofold. I think that is our in our DNA, that we work hard, that our work ethic is is very strong. And whenever we start to accomplish a goal, that we work really hard to do that. And then on the other side of it, I think it is that feeling inside that we have to really, prove that we can do, that we can carry the weight, so to speak, that we can do a good job. And then that others look at us with respect and say, hey, man, they're doing, a really good job. And I think that emotionally, we probably don't even realize that we're doing that, bringing that feeling in with us about trying to do better, because we want others to see that as a Native woman or Native individual, that we do have that capability, to perform really well. I'm sorry, Charlie, you're going to say something?
I remember what I wanted to touch on. It's when you mentioned seems like a disconnect between health disparities and emotions. When somebody talks about having high blood pressure, a lot of times we may automatically think it's in our genetics, it's in our DNA because our parents had high blood pressure or our grandparents had it, but we fail to realize a lot of it has to do with our lifestyles, what we're eating, and emotionally that stress just magnifies it. And I think just living in a pharmaceutical world where we're bombarded with all types of advertisements, even though some of us are addicted to foods that cause us to have high blood pressure, we're still missing that connection. And like ancestrally, our people had a holistic approach to everything, because we had the teachings that everything is related. Right. We're related to everything in the environment and to each other. And I feel like nowadays in modern society, we're put into a box. So we're not living as holistically as we could, which might help us tackle some of those issues, tying our emotions to stress eating, which can later lead to problems like, diabetes and high blood pressure. So I just wanted to touch on that.
I appreciate that connection you made, because that's also something that I've learned more about and did a group on intuitive eating, but trying to understand first, like, what does disordered eating look like and how we're eating based off of these emotions sometimes. Maybe we're bored, maybe we're stressed, maybe, we just want some comfort. We love some comfort food. And so that fried stuff, those potatoes, and yeah, it's all intersectional, it's all connected, and we have to remember that.
I mean, even something like recognizing historical trauma and how it, we might be, you were talking about intuitive eating, we might be eating out of, for reasons that other ethnicities can't relate to, but it's a native, it's something, it's part of our walk, it's part of our journey. So that's something else to keep in mind.
The first thing that happens for us as a people when somebody passes away, the biggest thing that we do is that we cook and we take the food, because that's our way of, showing love and showing comfort. So I think that you're exactly right about that emotional, food being that emotional comfort for us, because we're feeling like it seems, if somebody gets sick or if somebody passes away, Aunt Delphi is going to be there with a pot of collards. That's how she's showing that she is, giving love. She's, love is an action word for her. So, and that's the way that you help those that are in need, especially during the time of loss. We feed each other, and we make sure that, we're kind of safe and sound. And I think that emotionally that, that's the way that we help each other to heal. So, Charlie, we sit on a CRT team. And so can you talk about that just a little bit and tell about the work that's happening on that CRT team that is helping the emotional factor that's been happening during COVID?
So we do sit on a statewide initiative. It's a community response team is what CRT stands for. And we are representing our tribal communities here in the state. And it's a response team that was set up to distribute information as it pertains to COVID and COVID testing and information that is released pertaining to COVID, and helping our tribal communities to build more trust with these resources and with these organizations, because of all the trauma that we've been through as Indigenous people, because of the trauma that we're still going through with our relationships with the state and federal governments. We as Native people tend to have a distrust when it comes to the government, when it comes to science. And so this team was put together, and we've been meeting, sharing information about testing sites that are within our communities, vaccination rates, and just, your average household conversations. What's being talked about around the dinner table? Did your family get vaccinated? How are they feeling? Are they trepidatious? Those kinds of things. And, we already experience a lot of heavy, trauma. And so we're trying to find ways to help our communities deal with it, especially with COVID. And dealing with emotions, being able to talk about it. And here lately, we've made the decision to host talking circles. And they'll be coming to the different tribal communities throughout the state. We've been trained to facilitate these talking circles because historically, that's what our people did. We sat around in circles because we understand the importance of a circle as being infinite and continuous, and carrying that blood, carrying our bloodlines continuously. And whatever you put into a circle is what you're going to get out. And so with that understanding, we sit in a circle facing each other and just talk it out. If someone has a question or an issue that they want to bring up, that person's allowed to speak until they're finished. And then whatever you've designated as the tool that you pass, whether it's a feather or a stick, that's meant to be a symbol of respect, that you're going to sit there and you're going to let that person express themselves. It can be 10 seconds, it can be a minute, but let them express themselves and let them get those emotions out on how they're feeling. And we've been tailoring these to speak on COVID and how our communities are dealing with it. So that's what our community response team's been up to.
Yeah, and because we do find that especially in our tribal communities, that the rate of the vaccination rate is, a lot lower than in the other areas. And I think that a lot of that is what you're saying and what we have been discussing about that lack of trust. And, sometimes it takes a long time, to get past that. And a lot of that historical trauma is passed down to our DNA, because it's not just the older folks that don't want to get vaccinated. We have younger Native Americans that don't want to get vaccinated either. And it's that, lack of trust, not knowing, if you're going to be okay or not. And so emotionally, that also plays into, kind of the stress levels and the physical effects that even, trying to make a decision about a vaccination can have on us.
Yeah, I think our talking circles, healing circles are just so powerful because they bring us back to our cultural values and that acceptance and that interconnection and, no competition. Like, it's so different from the world we walk in daily when we're in our careers and when we're trying to get jobs and things like that, because there's all this competition. Charlie, I know you know how UNC is with their competition,
Yeah.
that competitive environment.
So
it's totally opposite when we remove that competition and we recognize that we don't have to agree with what's being shared in this space, but we can accept and we can respect what folks are sharing, and the healing and the medicine and just the gifts that are present in those spaces. It's so powerful and so healing for us as a people.
And something else that I would like to see implemented more in our communities are sweat lodges. It's a form of prayer. There's no judgment in there. When you're in a sweat lodge, it's all about healing, prayer, song, and meditation, and being one with the rocks, with the steam, and just with everyone in there sharing in that experience. There's not a whole lot of talking really that goes on as opposed to talking circles, but just being in there with that sense of community. I'd like to see a lot more of that to help process. It's a way to help process your emotions.
Yeah,
you're in there and it's hot and you're like, can I do this? Can I withstand this? Can I make it to the end? So you're battling these emotions and questions that are, am I going to pass out? Stress, prayer. It's a beautiful experience wrapped up into one. So
it's another release.
Yeah. So, and I think that, a lot of times that we don't like to be alone with ourselves. So we don't like that quiet time to process, what's going on in our hearts and mind, because we don't like how it feels. We don't like what, we see. We don't know how to deal with it. My Alex used to tell me that he would say, Mom, I think that you do so many different things. You have so many projects going on because you don't like to be alone with your mind. And I said, I think you're right. Because I have experienced a lot of, really difficult things in my life. And if I'm not pushing forward, trying to be productive in some way. And I have downtime where I'm thinking on that. How, I feel depressed. I feel, all of these things that are difficult to, to deal with. And that self-care, I think that is so important for us. And I think we absolutely don't know how to do it, because we feel guilty if we're not constantly pushing forward, trying to be productive, trying to make things happen. Then, we don't feel like that we either deserve to take a time out, or that, we're not being productive if we don't, if we do that. So I think that self-care definitely is something that we need to talk about more, and say, hey, it's okay whenever you're feeling, really stressed, take a time out and go on vacation, do something fun, do something that you like to do, that you don't have to be responsible for anything in that moment of time, that you can just be with yourself, or you can just do what you love to do. And I think that as a people, we have a problem with doing that. I know my dad and my grandpa and all of my uncles and our families, they were just always working, always, trying to be productive, and didn't take a whole lot of time, for themselves. So I want to ask you guys a question. So Native Indigenous people who meet the criteria for depression and anxiety or substance abuse seem to seek spiritual help rather than medical. Is that something that you guys have witnessed in your arena, that our people tend to seek spiritual help? Like they may go to a deacon or a preacher that they know, rather than seeking medical help. Why do you guys think that's so?
Yeah, I can start on this one, but that's back to that stigma that we talked about in the last session. In the past, mental health concerns have been seen as like a spiritual failure, or you're not close enough to God, you haven't prayed enough. But I'm here, and I hope everybody listens and hears this today, that you can have a preacher, you can have a spiritual life and somebody who prays for you, and you can have a therapist. It is not all or nothing, or one or the other. And so I think just continuing to break down that stigma can allow folks to, lean in. And I've been thinking this week, like the thoughts were rolling through my mind about, you need therapy, and you need community support, and you need spiritual spiritual leaders. You need all of a holistic approach, like Charlie was talking about earlier. We need all of those factors to be our best selves, and hopefully, that's what we're all striving for. So yeah, I feel like it's mainly related to the stigma we have around mental health and the lack of understanding about it.
And just to tie in with what you're saying, Alicia, the verse that comes to mind is faith without works is dead. Prayer is it's a big priority for me. I consider myself to be a woman of strong faith, but I know that things are only going to happen if it's the Lord's will. Okay, if it's not in the books, it's just not going to happen. But you can work towards just whatever you're striving for. And I relate it to health, because I've dealt with my own health issues. Some of you may know that I recently had a kidney transplant, my second kidney transplant. I had it last April. Around the same time, my mother was dying of cancer. So I was on dialysis. I was on dialysis for 4 years, found out that she was sick with cancer. And so I was going on doing my dialysis treatments the same time that she was doing her chemo treatments. And we prayed, went to church, saw, had the community praying for us, but we were also doing our part as well. I researched, I made sure, or I did my best to fill her body with good foods, to get her to ground herself, to take her shoes off, both of us, take our shoes off, go outside and ground with the earth and feel the frequencies of just being one with Mother Earth. And that's the kind of work I'm talking about, holistic work, instead of just sitting there praying. And, you know, we prayed, but you know what I'm saying, praying that something's going to work out, and not thinking anything else of it, not thinking that there's nothing that we could do. So we took the power in our own hands and went to work. And I feel like some of our people may rely more heavily on the church than they do their own strength and power and their own relationship with God and their own walk with God. We put a lot of our faith into men and women. Those are just a few things that come to mind.
And we have free will, right? Like
Yes.
if we believe we have the Holy Spirit in us, then we are co-creators in this, and we can use that free will in alignment with what we're praying for. And that is how you reach that, you know, optimal health there.
Right, because, you know, he said that he would raise us up and we could trample on serpents, you know. So although we go to others, you know, spiritually, it is about our relationship with Christ. You know, we have to believe, we have to pray, we have to, you know, do what he commands us to do. And just like you say, that faith without works is dead. So we have the faith that he's going to take care of us, but then he gives us something that we have to do as well. You know, it's kind of like if, you know, if we know that we are diabetic and we should not eat sweets, you know, we can't just pray and say, well, Lord, I don't want to be diabetic, and we continue to eat in a way that's not good for us. So, you know, we have a responsibility to do what he commands us to do.
Yeah, that reminds me real quick of when I was on dialysis. Two important things. Watch. I was really on it was a lot stricter diet than I'm on now. Watch for potassium and watch for phosphorus. And we were, you know, they took our labs weekly. So every week I had to hold myself accountable and tell myself, look, Charlie, if you eat this stuff, it's going to show up. You're going to feel miserable. You're going to be depressed. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to have these toxins built up in your system. So it's up to you to do that work. Keep the faith, keep your prayers. While you're sitting in that chair, you can pray for that phone call that you're going to get a transplant. But until then, in order to keep yourself alive, given the circumstances that you have to eat right. You have to lay down and go to sleep when your body is telling you to rest, or you're going to be miserable. So we just have to listen to ourselves and be aware of the emotions that are happening. I feel like self-awareness is a key component to optimal emotional health as well.
Because Christ will lead us in the direction that we need to go. And so all we have to do is just follow what he's leading us to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to just say I appreciate the comments in the chat, and I'm really sorry that this is something that you experienced. And religious trauma is also a thing. And I feel like, you know, that's why this personal relationship is so important. And so some people, you know, you can, if the pandemic taught us anything, is that church can be anywhere. Yes. We don't have to go to the church house. We don't have to necessarily be under specific people. So I appreciate that and encourage folks to continue to find, you know, where your church is and where that spiritual connection is. And we will have additional series additions on spiritual self. So tune into those as well.
And like Alicia said, we appreciate the comments that are in the chat, and we do, And we do want to say that we are so sorry that that happened. And I can attest myself that I was sexually abused as a child. And it took a long time, a lot of years kind of working through that. So I just developed a severe depression to where I was like 8 and 9 years old, and I just wanted to die. And my parents and my grandmother, I was with my grandmother most of the time, and she would tell me how much that she loved me, but in my heart and mind, I could not receive that, and I just, felt like that if I could disappear, that my family would have been better, that the world would just be better off if I wasn't there. But I know that that was a product of what happened to me, and that I, as a child, and then trying to work through that and never telling anybody about it, and just kind of holding it within myself for years and years. And I was married and had all 3 of my children. My youngest son was a baby, and I tried to kill myself. And that particular day, I prayed that particular day and said, Lord, if you don't deliver me, I will surely die. I'm going to die because I can't get past this. And so, and with that prayer and me seeking out, help from a therapist and all, in about a year or so, one day I was sitting in church and I just heard the Lord speak to me and say, how do you feel? And right at that moment, it was so audible till I turned around and looked back, because it sounded like somebody said it out loud. And I knew exactly, what he meant, what he said in my spirit. And I knew that I was better. A whole year had went by and I didn't feel that way. Now, did I still battle with that? I did, and still battle sometime with my own self-esteem and my own self-worth. And I have to push really hard to kind of get out of that, which is probably the other reason why I stay so busy, because, it keeps me kind of going and moving and, knowing that everything is okay. But it is very traumatic, whenever you have things happen. We talk about our missing and murdered Indigenous women. And, so many have lost their lives and have just been through so much. And I can say, as a survivor of domestic violence, my dad was an alcoholic. He was very abusive when I was a kid. And he got better as I got a little older. But then I got married at 18 years old, trying to kind of get away from home, and ended up in the same situation. And then that emotional part of it, that mental and emotional part of feeling like, well, I can't leave. This is my commitment, and I'm here. And, ultimately, I believe the Creator, made it so that I had to leave. I had to get out. And on that day, I knew that, I would never be back. And just being able to survive through those things, that was very difficult. It was very hard to handle. And so it takes time, for us to really sit and look at ourselves internally and say, hey, I'm okay. I'm not broken, and I'm not, all messed up. I would say that, I'm just broken and I'm not any good to anybody. But, that is not true, because all of us have value and all of us are very important and have a lot of worth. And so emotionally, us navigating the things that we have seen and been through in our lives is so important.
And so often we think we've done something to deserve these things to happen to us. And I'm just going to audibly say, nobody deserves this. You did not deserve that. And there's so much power in your story. And I really, just your bravery and vulnerability, thank you for sharing. And I think you probably have helped a lot of other people through your story and sharing that here with us right now.
So I have a question for you guys. How can we overcome the negative stigma surrounding the need for a healthy emotional self?
I think we're doing it.
I think
We're
so.
doing it. You just answered your own question with a metaphor. You did that just before you asked that question. You know, speaking your truth, sharing these stories, these hardships, releasing that trauma, because the silence is killing us, and that those suppressed emotions are eating us up from the inside out. And so whenever we can, you know, normalize these conversations, we can have spaces dedicated to talk about this stuff in a safe place, those are the things that I would say would be helpful to us.
Yeah, same. Just showing up and taking up space and expressing those emotions. Um, I'm a big, I'm a big believer, firm believer that if I'm right, and I'm gonna let you know, I'm gonna get it out. I used to, well, I still do. I get very emotional sometimes when I sing. Just and a lot of times it's mostly my original songs that I'll cry when I'm performing, because they came from the creator, they came from inside of me. Each song is, you know, I'm very meticulous about the words and the messages that I put out there. And I used to have people that would be like, stop crying on stage. Like I would sing Brown Skin, and start thinking about our girls and our women and just the stuff that we go through just to exist. The stuff that we have been through just to exist. And I'd start crying. And to me, that's a testament to, you know, the power of the song itself. It's like, if somebody listening to it in the audience can cry, how come I can't? We're human. You're human. You have those emotions. So just take up space and release it. Just, yeah, don't hold it in. I think that'll help destigmatize it for sure.
Yeah,
Well,
you have me crying singing them songs. On my birthday, this year I went to see Charlie. That was my birthday celebration, and she came out and had me crying on the first song.
anytime I see that in the audience, or somebody's expressing themselves inside, I'm just like, go ahead, let it out. Or I'll even say it in the microphone if I see them. I'm like, go ahead, let it out. Use it as medicine. Find what you can use as medicine, as a tool to release those emotions, because it's okay. If you found yourself a tool to help you release them, that's good. That's a step in the right direction. That helps you channel it and not misdirect those emotions. You know, your sadness, or just the grit inside of you that may make you want to cry. You may misdirect it later, like you were talking about earlier, as frustration. So just use it. Use tools to help you. Yeah.
And we as a people, you know, we think about how interconnected that we are, you know, no matter what tribe that we're from. You know, you think about whenever we are at our powwows, and we're all coming together in the circle, and you know, we're dancing and sharing with each other, and you know, doing jingle specials for, you know, people that are sick, or you know, whatever. Just that connection that we have with each other as Native people, I think is so special, because it's so different than, you know, most any other culture, you know, that we connect emotionally and spiritually, you know, in a way that is just on a totally different level, you know, I think. And we're able to lift one another up, and able to just, you know, push forward. And when you're crying, I'm crying, and when you're happy, I'm happy, you know. And that's the way that we were supposed to be. Saturday, whenever we did the event at the museum, our cultural day, whenever we were out there, I went in the arena to dance out, and I looked out up, and I saw all of the people that came out, And, I just immediately started to cry because I was so thankful that the county turned out and embraced us in such a way. And, our vendors, all of our native businesses that were downtown, they all did so well. But I was just so thankful because, whenever we start to do something, the first thing we think is like, I hope somebody will come,
Mhm.
and I think that's a part of that unworthiness that we carry in us and think, well, they're not going to show up, just because it's me or because it's us or whatever. So when I looked out and saw all of those people, it was just so amazing. And I think that everybody, shared in that. Fred Pedro, he was the MC for today. And I said, okay, so we have an MC on the horizon. And, it was just so wonderful. Different tribes that were there because we had Cheyenne that was there from the Waccamaw tribe, and then we had our Lumbee drummers and Tuscarora, and so all of those guys came out to celebrate Waccamaw Siouan Indian heritage with the museum. And so, as a people, we just connect and love each other and lift each other up, and it's such a special gift. I feel like that we have, as a people.
Yeah, I think it's just important to be authentic, just your
Mhm.
authentic selves. And I'm not gonna bash our men, or I don't want this to come off as bashing, but a lot of times our men try to be strong when they're just so soft on the inside, and they just need to cry, let it cry it in
Try it
public,
out.
because a lot of us, we live in a patriarchal society. Traditionally, our communities were matrilineal, but a lot of times we look to the men as the leaders, as the strong ones. They're the rock, they're the foundation. But I feel like our men need to express them. We as women can lead them and encourage them to express themselves more, to let them know it's okay, and maybe that'll have some kind of trickle effect throughout our communities. But just saying, because it was mostly men that would look at me and be like, "Stop crying! Why are you crying on
Right.
stage?" So
No,
Yeah.
you keep being true and authentic, because that's where our power is. And
yeah,
to me, when I get filled up like that, because I get like that sometimes in sessions or in like things when I'm facilitating talking circles, or even tonight, it's like when I'm walking in my purpose, it's like that little reminder. And so you keep doing that and modeling that for other people. It gives us our space to be our authentic selves and truly who we are.
And I want to say for everybody that's watching us tonight that um, each of us, every one of you has a special gift, and you have, you have all of these wonderful gifts and talents on the inside of you that can change somebody else's life. I mean, even like the individual that wrote in the chat about what happened to her, that took a lot of courage and a lot of strength.
Mhm.
And so we just want to encourage everybody that's watching tonight to know that you have gifts to offer. And, through you doing that, and just like Alicia's saying to Charlie, continuing to be your authentic self, continue to share the way you feel it, and that it really can change somebody else's life.
yes,
And
and
go
but
ahead, Charlie.
I was just going to say, and also understanding that those gifts are attached to emotions. There are, just plain as that, they're attached to emotions. Like, I wouldn't be able to write the songs that I do if I didn't get mad, or if I didn't be happy, or if I didn't feel pride. So there's a range of emotions that are attached to your gifts, and just try not to suppress them, and allow them to help you excel with your gifts.
And when Pam talked about suicide earlier, it just reminded me of what epidemic that is in our communities, especially in our adolescents. Native adolescents is a higher rate than any other cultural demographic. And so I just hope that folks found some hope in your story, that doesn't last, that can change. There's hope for the future, that the world is better with you in it, and we need you here.
Yes.
World is definitely better with us in it. I mean, imagine if you guys weren't here tonight, we couldn't have this conversation that we're having. So for everybody that's watching us tonight, know that you have a purpose, you have a gift, and the world needs it. We need it. And what I come to understand in the difficult things that happened to me in my life, I finally came to the understanding that had it not happened to me, I would not be able to do what I'm doing tonight, to say this happened to me, but I'm okay. Christ delivered me from it. My family, supported me and embraced me. And, and the same thing can happen, with all of us. You just have to keep pushing forward and know that your story is important. Your story means something to somebody else, because you may literally be saving somebody else's life.
Yeah, it's a testament to sacrifice. Like you went through that hurt, you went through that anger, that pain, that depression, so that you could be a light for someone else. I thought about it several times when I was on dialysis, that this is my journey, this is my walk. I kept the faith that I was going to come out on the other side better, having been through that experience. I was fortunate to have Mama with me by my side. And that's what I would encourage too, to look to your support system, seek out a support system to help you deal with your emotions. She was my sounding board, and that's it.
So one of the things I said, and we've got about 8 minutes left here, is I love the story about Esther in the Bible. So the king saw Esther, fell in love with Esther. She was beautiful, but he didn't even really know what he had in Esther. But at such the right moment in time, when the Lord revealed who she was, she saved a whole nation of her people. And so I have been thinking about, since it's been on my mind, and I keep saying, let's start a Esther revolution, that we as women, to know that we are mighty and we are wonderful and we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's what the Bible says that we are. But I love the story of Esther, because I'm like, the king made her and he just thought she was beautiful, but he didn't really know how special she was. And a lot of times we as individuals don't see how special we are, within ourselves. When we look in the mirror, we may not see how wonderful we are that other people see. And so I just want to encourage everybody tonight that you are, beautiful, and you are wonderfully made, and that your gift is important, and that you are an Esther in this generation, and that you have the ability to save a whole tribe of people, best by sharing your stories and speaking up, and, not cowering down, if even if people talk down to you, whatever, just know that you don't deserve that. And, your emotional self is really important. So in our last few minutes, do you guys want to share something that you feel like is important about us being emotionally healthy?
Well, I wanted to share a part of a song. I think I got a request for brown skin, and I'd like to sing just the first 2 verses because it does speak about being emotionally healthy. The world's going to try to knock you down for being an Indigenous woman, the minority of the minorities. It's going to try to knock you down, try to make you feel like you're invisible, try to make you feel like you don't have individual power, that you shouldn't let your light shine. But this song is encouraging just that. So I just want to share the first 2 verses, if you'll just listen to the words. An existence so beautiful, so colorful, deep-rooted in originality, eye candy of shallow minds. That was her reality still. She walks around with a smile for the whole wide world to see. Insides are screaming, free yourself from strains of society. Brown skin, why do you hide the pain within? Brown skin, brown skin. Day in, day out, it's the same, living by the standards of a male domain. She can't help but recognize the stares because of who she's talking to or the clothes she wears, yet she holds her head up high for the whole wide world to see. Insides are screaming, free yourself from strains of society. Brown skin, why do you hide the pain within? Brown skin, brown skin. So the song mentions several different elements and that we encounter on our daily walks as Indigenous women. So many emotions come with that, like anger, frustration, feeling oppressed, feeling like you're not worthy enough. But the song is encouraging. It's saying, why do you hide the pain within? Don't hide it, express it. Share your story, share your light. And that, to sum it up, I would say that's the most important thing in my eyes about maintaining your emotional health, is to simply express it and get it out. Don't hide it. It'll just compound that pain. Just get it out. So.
I want to end on that because that was
That was perfect, right?
drop. But I think we definitely brought our emotional selves to this, and we titled this one right. And I've been emotional throughout the whole thing, and probably going to continue just this release throughout the night. And I just have so much gratitude for this conversation, and for anybody who comes across this now or as we post a recording. I hope that you find healing in this and find power in expressing your emotional self.
Thank you, ladies. We're just so excited about this conversation, and just feel like it's going to do so much for the community. And remember that you are all fearfully and wonderfully made. You all have gifts, and express your emotional self. It's okay to do that. And join us for our next talk. Will be December the 10th, where we will be talking to some young ladies about our physical self, talking about our physical health. So we thank you for being with us tonight, and we hope that you have heard some information that will bring healing to your heart and to your mind. Thank you.
Native Girls Rock. Never forget it.
Yay.
Native Girls Rock. Thank you for having us. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you so much.